Howdy ho! We are here for our weekly energy oracle forecast, where we are taking a look at the week ahead to see what kind of energy we will be living and moving and having our being in. Before I started the video, I was shuffling and fire came out, and I just put it back in the deck and kept shuffling, but I made a note of it. But I think that the fire in the air right now has been Mars squaring Uranus. Some people say Uranus, but I like to say your anus. It's funner that way. And Uranus sounds like urine anyway, so between pee and a butthole, I'll pick Uranus. So, I love the way we started this video. So anyway, that square has been very volatile, as we can see how it's played out in the Middle East. And in fact, I happened upon a couple of astrocartographers that are able to compare the astrology to various places on the planet, and that aspect was happening directly over Iran and the countries in the Middle East that Iran retaliated to. So it's really, really wild. But the fire in the air, I think, is just, there's this tension, there's this fire going through the atmosphere, like the transformative flames, like the violet flame, like the green flame. And I think that it's going through finishing out this portal of eclipse season. I think this flame has been burning through and pushing things into exposure. It's been like that alchemical fire, that spiritual fire. So it's been materializing in various ways, in destructive ways and in chaotic ways. And, the energy that's going on in the spiritual realm, whatever it's doing, on the inside, and whatever it's doing to move the density around to be exposed, it is causing disruption and upset and volatile conditions in the planet. And it's interesting too, because if you have watched the yearly overview of the 2026 prediction series, huge world events like this were predicted, but it's different when you're in it and they're playing out and you see how it materializes. So I remember talking about world leaders, hot-headed men butting heads, particularly coming up in July. The energy is going to surge again in, a very kind of aggressive, cocksure manner. So, I think what we're seeing now, there's going to be another wave of it in July. So we'll see how this all plays out for now. But we have our first card coming out after that fire card comes out, water. And so another card that came up throughout the 2026 prediction series throughout the year was water. And it makes sense now because we are in the year of the fire horse, which can be very impulsive and impetuous, being quick to act and being hot-headed and quick-tempered and maybe not thinking things through, being impulsive. So we need to balance that fire with some water to cool our jets to keep things stable, right? When you're thinking about mechanical engineering, we need heat to generate energy, but then also we need that cooling effect that is brought in by the water to keep everything sustained and running, right? So we don't want to burn out and be depleted, right? We need to have that water. So it's being able to get into a flow, to be able to go with the flow but not get lost in the current, There's so much wisdom in water to be able to use it as a cleansing element, as a nurturing element, as a cushioning, like water holds you, right? It can cradle you. It can protect you from the harsh exposure, right? Think about embryonic fluid, or think about like floating on top of the water, you know? So there's a lot of things about water. The water and the sacral chakra is also connected to the gates of like life and death and the souls in the spiritual realm. Well, it's like we've seen and heard all of these like very dark truths and nightmarish truths coming out involving evil in the other realms, and organized worship and ritual and sacrifice around this. I think that we used to have this understanding that it was probably out there in the world, but I think we all thought it was just rare and probably like improbable. And I guess really we're learning it's actually not the case at all. And so I think being in the midst of spiritual warfare, and I think that if you were if you were like raised in an evangelical household, you heard the term spiritual warfare until you were blue in the face. It gets really thrown around, and I think that term gets abused a lot and taken in vain. But I think we're seeing what it really is in the literal terms, and in big loud ways, and in figurative ways, and in subtle ways. But I think that people think spiritual warfare and they think about movies like Constantine, and we're fighting the big battle evil, and it's going to be big and high budget explosions and bad guys. But it's more subtle than that. And I mean, it is kind of like that is playing out in the world stage right now. But on a personal level, we're not directly involved, not necessarily, depending on where you are. But on a personal level, it's like the battle that we are fighting is against despair and against constant worry and anxiety and loss of hope and feeling like there's no point and feeling apathy. We're fighting apathy. We're fighting numbness. And that's exactly what they want, when they give us all of this horrible information and these basically dump all these horrors and terrors into our awareness. They're doing it on purpose to break our spirit and to turn us insane and apathetic and passive and complacent and beat down. So fighting that spiritual warfare, the demons feed off of our misery. It's they're like parasites. They're like seagulls that gather around for crumbs. And so the fight is when that sadness, that emptiness, that numbness starts to take you over. You have to catch yourself and you have to think, okay, I am projecting a judgment. And one of the points of the Zohar portion this week is that part of trusting in divine protection and guidance and trusting our life at all has to do with letting go of our projection of how we think things should go, because then that leads to judging whether or not something about our life is playing out for good or for bad. This is so bad for me, or this is so good for me. Many times we don't see that something that we would at first stroke label this is bad actually turned out to be something that was good for us in the end, and it brought out the next level of our soul, right, and our potential. But the way that we saw it, we just mislabeled it, right? So part of the challenge spiritually this week, tied into like the Torah portion, the Zohar portion, is to not jump to conclusions about labeling something as this is going to be good, this is going to be bad. We don't know. Life is a mystery, and sometimes, and God is a mystery, and God works in mysterious ways. I know that sounds like an old cliche, but it's very true. And so many times we don't have the bigger picture when we're in the minutia, in the micro, and what we perceive that's happening, there's like a bigger story that we don't see that's going on. So it's playing into a bigger part. Having said that, circling back to all the spiritual warfare going on, it's like, so yes, we have to fight that darkness with finding our way back to joy and lightness and inner peace every day. We can't let those dark feelings take us down, right? And they were all over me this morning, and I had to really fight, because there was a big temptation to take a cut from work and just fall into the low energy and the low mood and the low, thoughts. And it's just, I pushed through, and I went and I did my Bible study, and I did my thing, and I did my ritual stuff today, and I went into work, and, I'm glad that I did. So it's just finding ways that we can jolt ourselves awake when we fall into the hypnotism of the sadness, the heaviness, when it's taking you down. Try to disconnect from the storyline that you're going into, and try to do something in that moment that connects you with spiritual support, with prayer, with changing the thought to choosing another thought, right? And if you have like the ability to, I don't know, do a prayer practice really quick, or like for me, if I'm, off on bad thoughts for the day, I have podcasts that I know I can listen to that are by my spiritual teachers that get my mindset on issues of spiritual relevance and significance, and that shifts it all. That shifts my energy. So fighting that spiritual warfare, fighting against the feeling of being guilty for feeling happy or joyous, because in order to be connected with our blessings, in order to be connected with the Holy Spirit and our protection, our provision, then we have to match that vibration. And the Bible talks about it all the time. And in fact, when Jacob lost Joseph and he thought Joseph was dead, I can never remember there was Jacob was the father of Joseph or Joseph was the father of Jacob. I think Jacob was the father of Joseph. And so Jacob had been like this blessed patriarch, but when he thought he'd lost his favorite son, he fell into years of hard times because he was so devastated that those hard times were like separating him from the flow of blessing and goodness, because the Holy Spirit couldn't be near him during that time. The Holy Spirit couldn't hover over those waters because there was no vibrational affinity there. So again, we are fighting that spiritual warfare when not only we can choose to discipline ourselves back to joy, but we can do it without feeling guilty about it. But also, shoot, I lost it. Hopefully it'll come back. It was when I was making a point to like choose our way back to joy. Without guilt. I don't know if it's important, it'll come back to me. And then another thing that I found was very relevant about the sacral chakra / water element coming up through the year. and this week particularly is because this is where we have all of our sexual energy, and we store our sexual shame and guilt there. And this is where also like our appetites are either brought into balance or out of balance. And so all of these things coming out of the shadows right now are revealing the perversion that has been so rampant, and the violent perversion in the shadows. And so it's like we're collectively like processing all of this, and then trying to untangle all of the societal projections and pressure over feminine sexuality and body image, and coming to terms with like who was running that and all the influences behind that, and untangling all of that now. And so even if you weren't involved in the Epstein system, so many people have been have suffered from unwanted, I'm trying to think of words that aren't going to trigger like shadow banning, but like people who have experienced sexual violence, they're being triggered, and this is bringing up all of the stuff that they've been having inside. And I mean, there are so many people who have been some degree have been experienced either passing sexual harassment that's ongoing, or it's like on a spectrum, but like you would be shocked at how many people, like when I took a mental poll of all the people that I knew about one time, and it was like over 30 people. It was like 1 in 3 or 4 of the people that I knew had gone through something unwanted and violent, or any manner of this. So the collective is carrying and processing and facing and healing so much trauma around sexuality, so much programming, so much shame, so much projection on us. We're just like trying to dismantle all of that and cleanse it and get to that and get into the healing of it all. But I don't know, there's something about that in the forefront of everything coming to this boiling point right now. And so I think that this is something that is going to lead to expansion, though. Like, I think that it's a healing that has been holding us back, all obviously as a collective, right? As a human race. And it feels like so intense and uncomfortable and scary and devastating and heartbreaking and outrageous and disgusting, and all these things that are coming up. But I think this is getting things out of us that have been dense and heavy and have been holding us back and holding us down and anchored by ideologies and beliefs that were projected on us with dark motives. And so now I think we can start shaking a lot of that off and letting a lot of it go. And I just feel a lot of expansion coming. I feel a lot of purge in the spiritual atmosphere. I feel a lot of emotion, just raw, just like running through people. I feel that people are exhausted because it's like having like a surge of electricity like running through your system. But I do feel like there's something also happening that's purging and cleansing and resetting. And I feel like on the other side of this week, I feel like we're going to start feeling expansion and acceleration, because that is part of that year of the fire horse, right? Is that accelerated pace, expansion, acceleration. But it doesn't feel like quite like it yet. I mean, it feels like everything is moving so fast, but it feels like everything is moving fast around us. Like I still feel like the thing being held back in the slingshot. Everything else is moving in ludicrous speed around me, but like I'm still feel like I'm holding still, like in this hand, and it's like a slingshot. And any minute though, the universe is gonna let us go, and we're gonna go projecting forward. So I think now is the time to prepare for that kind of acceleration and expansion, and spending time too visualizing, getting creative, right? Like after we purge all of these things that we've been healing. And I mean, I know like for a lot of people, they might be starting that process, or they might be at different places within it. But I feel like for our collective, I feel like we've already done a lot of that work. And I feel like we're ready now to go out into the next phase. And so our healing, the major part of it, I feel like we've come to a level of completion. And now it's like almost like taking a mikvah into the water, where we rinse off that residue of the past and we rise up that reborn creature. And that like brings us into a state of expansion, of growth, of acceleration. And so the knowledge card came up, and I feel like this is knowledge of ourself. I think it's understanding of the knowledge of the greater hidden wisdom, like the higher knowledge, but also like knowledge of the world, like being able to look into the world and understand the way that the dots are connecting, and being able to see the patterns. Like that knowledge, I think, is becoming more solidified in our awareness. It's not something that is just like a hunch that we're dismissing anymore as like, oh, I'm being imaginative or this or that. It's like, I think that we're seeing how things work, and we're understanding on a greater level how the inner workings of the cosmos operate in its beautiful machinery. And so I think that having that foundation, it makes it easier to interpret what we are seeing play out in the physical realm, and like what is going on behind the scenes that is creating this manifestation. It's like we've seen behind the veil, now we're understanding on a deeper and deeper and deeper level. So higher knowledge is going to be coming into our awareness. I feel like we're going to be like embodying that knowledge. I feel like we're just really coming into that, and embodiment of like this new level of self, like new levels of self-knowledge and self-awareness, new levels of confidence, new levels of understanding of life and the world, and our ability to confidently not second guess ourselves, right? And I think that we're becoming more decisive about trusting our instincts and our knowledge, and being able to move forward without second guessing ourselves or gaslighting ourselves or being hesitant or skittish. I think we're a lot more bold going forward. Joy, finding that joy, reconnecting to the joy, that will be the ultimate power. This was in my own personal reading this week, that joy. Finding our way back to joy, crowning ourselves with that joy, because it is the ultimate weapon against evil, against darkness. They don't have joy. Joy is not part of what they have. They can jeer and have like this dark, evil glee about things, but they don't have true joy, and they don't have inner peace, and they don't have real love, right? So that vibration, that joyous vibration, that is an expression of one of the attributes of God, of Christ, of the Holy Spirit. And so it is a very high vibrational feeling. And as we saw in Bad Bunny's performance, joy is powerful. It turned people's prejudices around, I think, or it opened people's eyes. It awakened a lot of people that hadn't, like, that was their moment that they needed to, like, get them over the hump, you know, to wake them up. But we see how inviting joy is, and how not inviting, like, authoritarian force, anger, you know. And Jesus talked about this too, you know, being, you know, like beautiful smells that entice someone in rather than the clanging of gongs, Bible beating in their face, you know. It's like, right? So crowning our joy, finding our way back to joy this week is going to help everything. It's going to help the flow. Joy is going to help us find the flow of being in that divine inspiration, of being in that cosmic flow of ease and harmony and continuity. It's going to help us find that flow of our inner vision and creativity, and our fertile potency in our ability to create. And in this, we are going to be getting to a level where we're going to start expanding, right? So if we feel like we've been held back, like that slingshot visual, then think about the way that, like, the further back you've been pulled and the longer you sit there, like the further you're going to get shot out. You're going to get flung forward. So I feel like expansion is going to come just like that. We're going to propel forward in exponential growth, and it might be fast, but I feel like that's going to come as we embody the central column, right? We find our alignment: heart, mind, soul, body, spirit. Our thoughts match our actions, right? When we have our feelings, we cultivate the feelings that feed our intentions. We choose thoughts that yield good feelings, right? Our feelings are going to be the thing that either gives us fuel to keep going and get at it, or it's going to make us feel flat and, you know, low and not a lot of energy, right? And so we can cultivate better feelings by choosing different thoughts. That's what I had to do today, right? I was getting swarmed with thoughts of, you know, gloom, and I had to choose no. I had to choose otherwise. I had to say no to those thoughts because the feelings were pulling me down. I was starting to not feel like going into work. I was starting to feel tired. I was starting to feel despondent, right? So we can't do that, though, if we don't have enough knowledge of ourselves to be able to see where we're going and to be able to pick out those thoughts and those patterns. Oh, this is a pattern I get on. Okay, I need to break the pattern, disrupt the pattern, choose new thoughts, create stability, not so I'm swinging back and forth between, you know, extremes, but finding that stability and that balance and that temperance. Having knowledge of the self, and then using the knowledge and wisdom that we have of spiritual law and of the creator and of the human soul and of our purpose, using all that knowledge and embodying what we know and living in it. And then valuing joy, prioritizing joy. This is our greatest defense mechanism. This is our greatest offense mechanism. This is our greatest protection. This is our greatest generative manifesting energy. And we are getting closer to Aries season. And Aries is a very powerful manifester. It's one of the most powerful manifesting signs. So be prepared. And the more joyous that we can get, the more potency we will have in yielding fruit when it comes to our manifestations. All right, you all, that's all for tonight. I will see you tomorrow for our weekly anchor message, where we will be getting our spiritual assignments and lessons for the week. If I were you, I would follow me on Instagram, because you will see the written portion of Monday. Like 3 times a week, I do posts on Instagram, and those posts go out on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and those go out like in the middle of the day. Those posts become our anchor message for the week, like the readings with like all of the Kim Kranz cards, like the archetypes and the alchemy deck, and then the Radiant Sun Oracle, like those readings are done in blog form Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the middle of the day. And then whenever I can get to filming those episodes, that's when you guys see them. And sometimes like I can film them in the afternoon, but sometimes I don't get to film them until after work. So if you wanted to get a heads up and have, you know, these sort of thoughts on your mind, you can always see them earlier on Instagram. And so there I am Liz_Taylor_Magick, Magic with the CK, like on this channel. You'll also see more, like I'll post more personal stuff, just things that I'm doing, like if I'm, you know, out and about or whatever on there, or if I have any, like anything that comes up or whatever, any breaking news, you can find it there. All right. And then also I will say that the 2026 prediction series so far has been a very powerful spiritual tool for me throughout the year. And I have been in awe of the amount of events, not only in my own life, but just in the world, that were really covered. Like the themes were covered. And so being able to navigate this moment in time, and like the events that have played out even thus far this year, having had that as like kind of to prepare me for some of this stuff, it has actually really helped. And then it's not just a predictive tool about the year, but it also goes through our, like, the themes of our spiritual growth and our soul development through the year. And it highlights like challenges we might be coming up against or opportunities that might be looming. And so it helps us fortify and prepare for those times, and reflect also on, you know, how things have been going and how we want things to go. So it's a tool that you can continuously go back and reference and use. And so there are readings throughout the year. There's the yearly overview. There are quarterly breakdowns for each season. So there's seasonal readings, and there's monthly readings for every month. And then in each reading, in the description box below the video, there are journal questions that will help you go deeper into the work and really personalize it for yourself. And this is immensely helpful. Like I've been doing them for myself. And even though like I made the program, I'm doing the program as if I'm not the author of it. But it's been an incredible tool so far, and I am so glad that I have it and I made it. But it's $12, so it's very doable. It's very approachable. It's worth so much more. It would be worth like, you know, probably $150, but I wanted to make it realistic and affordable for us all. So it's less than the cost of actually the store. Like I'm coming out of pocket just to sell this. Like every month I have to pay $30 to have a stand store to sell this $12 program. So I believe in it, or else I wouldn't pay for it for you. So I highly suggest it. I highly recommend it. It's very helpful. And that is, you can go to my stand store. It's in the description box below, and that will take you to basically a very simple storefront. You would theoretically press click to buy. Then that will send you an email with a link to a playlist. that's not listed publicly. And that's how you get it. It's very simple, very, very straightforward, but very, very valuable, very helpful so far. All right, you all, blessings, peace be with you, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Also, last night in our Secret Teachings of Jesus episode, we started into the Gospel of Thomas. That's where we landed next. So I'm really excited about getting into that. And last night's episode, we did the introduction. So we got some context around what the Gospel of Thomas is and the difference between that gospel and the others. And then we got into some other like side quests as well. It wasn't just totally a dry introduction, but it was helpful because I think it gave us some insight and some context around both the Gospel of Thomas and the Gnostic Gospels. All right, well, y'all enjoy that as well. I'll see ya. Peace.